3 months, I'd say I on an average I used to sleep like 3 to 4 hours in a day at max. Uh,
Hi guys, welcome back to Wednesday podcast. This is me, Christian or Wednesday, and this is my third podcast, which I'm doing it with Awiral Gupta, a recent IIM graduate and an intern at Goldman Sachs, a company which I am really excited for. And I hope you like the podcast. If you do, please subscribe to the channel, like, share, and yep, the video is right next.
Hi, Awiral. Can you please introduce yourself?
Hi Trace, thanks for having me on this call. My name is Awiral Gupta. I am 24 years old. I recently graduated and completed my MBA from Indian Institute of Management in Indore this March. I am a mechanical engineer. I completed my undergraduate studies from Delhi Technological University, and post that, I directly joined my MBA program. Um, I've interned with Goldman Sachs in the investment banking division as a part of my summer internship program. And before that, I also have prior internship experience with Deloitte India in their corporate finance division, and one technical internship as an operations management intern with Maruti Suzuki, which is a automobile manufacturing firm.
Perfect. It sounds amazing, man. And coming up to the questions, like as you mentioned, like you're a recent graduate from IIM Institute. Like, so what was your experience like at IIM? And coming to the second question regarding to it, is, what is an average day for an IIM Institute candidate? So how does it go?
Mhm.
Like,
Sure. So I'll just answer your first part, which is how was MBA from an IIM different for me. I always knew that I wanted to do an MBA right from during my engineering days. I realized that going into the technical side of things wasn't my cup of tea. So I was actively looking for options and job opportunities, and most of them, the lucrative ones, kind of required an MBA graduate degree. And that is when I started my applications and I started to take IIMs quite seriously. I was lucky enough to get through CAT, and then it has been an immense learning curve. It has been a great journey. I've met a lot of wonderful people, really intelligent and smart people. I've expanded my network. I've expanded my skills in terms of just not just technical skills, but as well as soft skills. So I'd say it's been a solid return on investment as a banker, would say, for me, both in terms of professional and personal growth.
sounds amazing.
Coming to the second part of your question, which is how an average day at an IIM goes. So the IIM curriculum is kind of different from the other government colleges in India, as in, I mean, like this goes for US colleges as well. I think every graduate degree or an undergraduate study has 2 semesters in a year. However, at IIMs, we have a tri-semester system, which is you have 3 semesters or 3 trimesters in a year, each 3 to 4 months in duration. I think I'd like to contrast the first trimester with the rest of the 5 trimesters because there's a lot going on in the first trimester itself. And, as Raghuram Rajan famously said, he's a graduate from IIM. He said that if you graduate the first term from an IIM, I think you can pretty much do anything in life because the stress and the grueling nature of the curriculum is quite a lot. There are a lot of things that a person handles and has to tackle through the first 3 months. Furthermore, each subject has a lot of small components that are graded on. So you have each subject that's divided into, you have your quizzes, you have your midterms, you have your end terms, you have assignments, presentations, class participation. So there's a lot going on, um, packed into a 3 month experience there in the first trimester. An average day would have you attending classes from, let's say, 8:30, 9 a.m. in the morning, late into the evening, say 4 or 5 p.m. You obviously get your lunch break and tea break in the middle. After the evening, you come back to your hostel, you kind of unwind for a couple of hours. You can either play sports, you have really good infrastructure facilities for any kind of relaxing environment that you want to have. And after that, it's straight back to the work. You either complete your assignments that are due the next day, you either study or prepare for your quizzes or your interns. And most of all, the most important thing I feel is to have a good grade point in IIMs. is to be judicious with your studies and to prepare everything beforehand. You're expected to learn and read all the readings and the lessons that are going to be taught the next day beforehand, one day itself. So I spent like 2 to 3 hours every day at night prepping subjects that I'm going to have classes for the next day. Apart from that, the first 3 months also kind of inculcate you into the system. What I mean by the system is that the student body in IIM, they have a lot of clubs and committees. I think this is similar to the structure of a lot of graduate colleges in the US. So you have your selections into these clubs and committees. You have your interviews to these. You have first of all kind of shortlist all the clubs that you want to apply for because they add a good point to your resumes and can add as a differentiating factor for top firms. And it's relatively difficult to get into these clubs and committees. I think there are probably around 10 to 15 of them, and each club or committee probably just takes 4 or 5 members. And the batch size is huge. It's around 550 people in a batch. So, most of the time, apart from studies, would go into these preparing for these club and committee selections. And mind you, these are like relatively tough to get into. You have a lot of pre-processes to be done. You have a lot of group discussions and personal interview rounds, and at the end of the day, you say like you'll get a roster of 10 people who are shortlisted for a club. And since it is a democratic institution, you then have to prepare your manifesto. You have a proper election inside the college, and you have to kind of promote yourself as to why you should be getting into that club. So the first 3 months is quite hectic. Add to that the burden of preparing for the summer internship programs. So one thing that differentiates Indian colleges from universities abroad is that we have a campus placement structure wherein firms come on campus and take your interviews, whether it be for summer internships or for final placements. And usually the summer internship interviews happen at the end of the first trimester. So in the first 3 months, you're also kind of trying to gauge your preparation for the job interviews and applying and shortlisting firms as well. And it's a lot to handle for a person. So the first 3 months, I'd say I on an average, I used to sleep like 3 to 4 hours in a day at max. I remember like clocking in 2 hours at night and then 2 hours in the evening. So I used to kind of balance my sleep schedule around that. But after that, I mean, of course, once you get done with your first trimester, you get used to the grind and get used to the rigor of the curriculum. And after that, it's relatively easier. You just have your normal classes. If you get into clubs or committees, I think most of your time is spent in the evening working with your batchmates who are a part of those clubs. So an average day from in the second to sixth trimester would be you attending class in the morning as usual, and then in the evening probably relaxing with some sports. If you get like half an hour or 1 hour spare time, you can probably catch up on some TV show or a movie, and then again sit down and study for your next day's class. And this is how a regular day looks like.
Wow, that's pretty extensive, man. I mean, that's that's why I think IIM has its prestige status, and why it produces such highly bright students, and they get placed into big companies like that because you are just prepared for the grind. Like you're on your feet from the start of the day till the end of the night, and as you said, you just get like up to 4 hours of sleep, and that too not in the night, 2 hours in the night and 2 hours in the evening. You have to manage your sleep. I mean, that's pretty amazing. And plus, getting into the clubs, like getting into IIM is another story, but getting into a club, wow! I never knew that you have to, work so hard in order to get into a club at IIM. Okay, now coming to your, as you said, the summer internship, like you were an intern at Goldman Sachs, right? And that's a pretty huge investment company. So tell me, how was the process like? Like as you said, there are in-campus placements, right? The companies come to the campus, but I'm sure there must be different application processes, different application stages, and I'm sure many of the students must have applied to Goldman Sachs, seeing its reputation and prestige status. So how did it go for you, and how did you prepare for that?
Sure. So the application process is fairly streamlined. I think each of the IIM graduate or IIM student has a specific password and an ID. So we have a third-party portal. So you have a different kind of a website on the internet which displays all the firms that would be visiting the campus after 3 months. You have a lot of options at your disposal. At the same time, um, I'd say that you need to make up your mind first about which domain you're targeting. So let's say if you're focused enough, you'd be targeting one or two domains at max, because applying to different domains such as finance, consulting, or marketing all at the same time gets quite tedious and difficult to manage. As far as my experience is concerned, I was fairly focused on consulting and finance as two domains that interested me. How the application process goes is that on the portal you have a list of firms that are going to visit the campus. You just click and submit your resume, and the resume automatically gets uploaded and sent to the company's HR. So in that case, it's a fairly streamlined process. In terms of banks, obviously like Goldman is a big name, but apart from that, we had a lot of investment banks on campus, all of which had similar processes. We had Deutsche Bank, we had Goldman Stanley, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and the like thereof. Now, once you submit your resumes, the firms usually revert back in a week or so with the shortlisted candidates. So in a batch of like, let's say 550, 600 odd students, there will be a lot of people submitting their resumes, and firms revert back by shortlisting probably, let's say 40, 50 candidates, and then their processes are carried forward. Once you're shortlisted, each individual candidate who's shortlisted is assigned a buddy from the firm, and the main purpose of the buddy is to kind of gauge your interest levels and your aptitude for the firm before you called in for interviews and for the stages. So what helps in this stage is being proactive with your buddies, being honest and upfront about them, with them about your intentions, and getting on call as soon as possible and networking well. And you're basically judged on these buddy interactions. And this carries on for, let's say, 7 to 10 days. You'll have mentors and buddies from different banks if you have multiple shortlists. And the process carries on for around, let's say, 8 to 10 days. And through that process, they're able to filter out, let's say, even more number of applicants. Um, After the buddy call phase, you get another round of shortlist, and these shortlisted students are called in for, let's say, what is known as the networking round. What I mean by networking round is basically they try to gauge your culture fit for the firm. How well are you able to interact in person? The networking rounds usually happen close to the personal interview round stages and happen towards the end of the first trimester. Once you get a shortlist, you'll be given a date and a time, and usually these networking rounds happen in luxurious five-star hotels, either over dinners or over lunches. And these are like basically the managing directors and VP level people who are coming down to your campus and kind of looking at you in person and judging you. So the thing that I guess worked for me was I wasn't too formal during these dinners because they obviously want to have someone they can have a chat with and who would be presentable to the client. And it's just basic communication skills, and obviously you need to show your interest and your ability to work there or work with them. There is again a round of shortlist after the networking dinners or networking lunches, and the final shortlist, probably like 15, 20 odd people, are called in for personal interviews, which happens usually a day or two apart because once the Goldman team or the bank team comes on campus, they'll probably leave in about 2 or 3 days, so they need to wrap up the process as soon as possible. After that, once you get your three personal interviews with the Goldman team, each personal interview lasting around anywhere from 30 to 40 minutes. Um, the range of questions that are asked in this interview can encompass anything and everything under the sun. A handy tip that I used for structuring my preparation for these interviews was I prepared my studies on three fronts, or like I divided them into three buckets. First is basically your HR questions. HR questions would basically be your questions from your resume, questions to gauge your interest levels, questions like what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, why finance, why banking, why investment banking in particular, and why this firm in investment banking, and why you like going in this direction. What is the purpose? What is the end game? These kind of questions. It's always helpful to kind of prepare pointers to these questions, and it is a relatively important area to focus on. The second bucket I focused my preparation on was basically technical aptitude. Of course, if you're going into banking or finance, you need to be well equipped with all the knowledge and the terms that are used in banking, primarily accounting. I'd say some bit of finance, valuation, financial ratios, and stuff like that. I think all these tools provide you with the required technical knowledge with. And the third front I prepared my preparation on was basically catching up on all the current affairs. I read up articles on mergers and acquisitions. I read up articles online on various sources about how the banking industry is faring in general, what major deals is Goldman a part of, that you're able to kind of have a good chat about their firm with them.
Okay.
So I think I was able to strategize my preparation well, and I believe that helped me get a clear sense of what the firm is doing and where I want to go.
Okay. That
Yeah.
sounds perfect, man. So, what basically is like you really need to know what the company is about, the culture of the company, and how the company is moving forward. And you really need to show interest towards the finance field and towards the specific role that you're applying into, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
that's right.
perfect. Okay. And subsequent to that, what does a global bank such as Goldman Sachs or any other investment bank, any other global investment bank, look for in a candidate apart from their GPA and you know work experience? Like, what does makes a person stand out?
Um, I'd say obviously a great part is your analytical aptitude. And one reason as to why higher CGPA grads are historically um, getting into these firms is because it's a way to gauge your analytical aptitude as compared to the rest of your peers. Apart from analytical aptitude, I think being quick on your feet and knowing the implications of what you're doing. I mean, it's all fine to know financial ratios and to know how to form a balance sheet or how to make a cash flow statement or P&L. But what's actually going behind those numbers? Having that reasoning skills, having that logical reasoning bit is more important.
Okay.
Also, being proactive with your communication. And this is something that I learned hands-on during my internship, is to communicate effectively and efficiently with your teammates. You'll be staffed with a lot of work. You'll be in a lot of pressure situations and stressful situations wherein you have like 10 odd things to do at the same time.
Okay.
But prioritizing things well, managing your time well, and at the same time communicating it effectively to your manager or to your team is a really important skill. That they try to gauge during interviews. And the third aspect is obviously interpersonal skills. This I experienced during my second interview round with Goldman, wherein I was, which is typically called a stress interview. So I was bombarded with a lot of questions at the same time, and they tried to see if I was able to handle it well. Because in front of a client, you can't just be flustered and not perform under pressure. How you're able to interact with your peers or with your manager or probably the client under high pressure situations and high stress situations is also important. So I think these three skills majorly.
Perfect. And another question that it's not related to that, but it's something that I really want to know is that does these big firms, these big companies look for just top B school grads, or like did you encounter any other student as well who was recently graduated from not top B grade school, but from a general relative college?
I did, but the relative proportion of lateral hirees, so we call two types of hirees. We have campus hirees, or basically people who are cherry picked from top these schools, known as campus recruits. The other is your lateral recruits, so basically in through referrals or off-campus processes. However, at the same time, the firm is looking for the same kind of characteristics in a person. What usually would help a person from a non-target school would be to have a good resume, good academic performance throughout, and apart from that, relevant experience in the same field. I found a lot of people who had done certification courses such as CFA or FRM, or were either prior CAs, chartered accountants, and who actually knew the technical stuff. And this is a gateway that a lot of people use. They usually work at a boutique investment bank or in another finance firm, not just investment bank or any other bank, probably gather relevant experience for a couple of years and then try to switch to investment banking.
Okay, perfect. Got it. And is CFA required for you to get a position at Goldman Sachs?
No, it's not. It's not a shortlisting or a filtering criteria. Absolutely not. It's just something that could add to your credentials and show that you're you're inclined towards finance as a domain that you're willing enough to put that amount of time and money into a certification. So
Okay.
it's not a mandatory criteria. I mean, I myself was in a dilemma over whether should I go for a CFA certification or not, but I opted against it.
Mhm.
But that still didn't kind of stop me from getting into the field.
Okay, perfect. And coming to the last question, so
Mhm.
what role does GPA play in your recruitment? Like, does your CGPA or your GPA really play a major role in whether it decides on you getting hired or not?
I wouldn't say like it's a be all end all criteria. I mean, it definitely adds weightage to your profile and your candidature amongst all the other applicants. Because for the firms it's easier to kind of gauge your attitude and position you as compared to the rest of your batchmates. If you have good CGPA, it indicates you're in the better part of the bell curve, in the higher end. But at the same time, I think if you still don't have a good CGPA, but you have all the characteristics that I mentioned before, and probably you have certain certification courses that you've done
Okay.
that shows that you're willing enough to learn and you have the ability to clear those certifications and or probably work in that domain, then it wouldn't be a be all end all criteria.
Okay. Perfect. Sounds good.
But it definitely helps. But having good CGPA definitely helps.
Okay. Sounds good. Got it. And thank you so much for coming in and having a chat with me, man. I really appreciate it.
Sure, sure. It's no worries. And have a good time.